Barcelona just had one of their best seasons in recent memory. They won the league, bagged 2 domestic cups, and looked like a team reborn. But for all their brilliance, they still came up short. No European trophy, and that Champions League semi-final loss to Inter? It hurt. Not because they weren't good enough, but because they ran out of gas. And if Hansi Flick will lead this team to European glory next season, he needs to fix one massive problem. But what is that problem and how will he fix it? Well, let's talk about that. Barcelona were brilliant this season, no need to sugarcoat it. They won La Liga with authority, they added the Copa del Rey and the Supercopa to their cabinet, and they didn't just scrape by, they dominated domestically. The football was sharp, the pressing was intense, and the team looked alive again. And for the first time in a while, there was real consistency. Young players stepped up, veterans held the line. Hansi Flick brought a structure that worked across all competitions. Well, almost all. Because as good as they were in Spain, they still walked away from Europe empty-handed. That Champions League run had promise, they looked serious, they got past tough opponents, but in the semi-finals when it mattered most, they fell short against Inter Milan. And that's where the real problem showed itself. It wasn't about tactics, it wasn't about desire, it was about depth. By the time they reached extra time against Inter, they looked worn out, not because they don't have quality, but because they don't have enough options. They needed 1 or 2 players to come off the bench and flip the momentum, and they just didn't have them. If Barcelona are going to take the next step, if they want to bring a European trophy back to Camp Nou, they need to fix this, because what they have is great, but it's not enough for the full season. And that brings us to the core of the issue. Not the starting 11, but the bench, and it all starts with the kind of squad they're building right now. By the way, hit the subscribe button. Thank you. This Barcelona squad is incredibly talented. You look at the names and it's hard not to get excited. Lamine Yamal is doing things at 17 that some wingers don't manage in their careers. Pedri and Gavi, when fit, control games like seasoned pros. Alejandro Balde is a consistent threat down the left. And then you've got Rafinha, Ferran Torres, Lewandowski. This isn't a weak squad by any stretch. But here's the problem, it's still too young and too thin. There's potential everywhere but no safety net. Most of these players are under 23 and the few experienced ones are carrying too much of the load. Flick is working with a core that's technically sound and full of energy, but in a long season, with injuries, fixture congestion and the pressure of high-stakes matches, potential isn't enough. You need reliable options off the bench, players who can slot in without the level dropping. That's where squad depth becomes non-negotiable. Barcelona can't expect Yamal to play 60 games a season. They can't risk losing Pedri or Rafinha for weeks and then scramble to find solutions. And it's not just about replacing tired legs, it's about having the right profiles, different styles, players who can come in and change the dynamic of a match. And the first place this lack of depth shows? The left wing. Because for all the praise Barcelona deserves this season, the left wing exposed a serious gap that cost them at the highest level. Now, don't get it twisted, Rafinha was outstanding. He had one of his best seasons in a Barcelona shirt. His decision-making in the final third was sharper, his defensive work rate improved, and he delivered in clutch moments. Whether in the league or during the Champions League knockout stages, Rafinha showed up. You could argue he was one of the most consistent attacking outlets under Flick. His ability to stretch play, create overloads and press high made him vital to the team's success. But here's where things fall apart. When Rafinha was tired, there was no real replacement. The next option? Ferran Torres. Now, Ferran isn't a bad player. He works hard, makes good runs and chips in with goals, but he's not a natural winger in the way Barcelona need. He doesn't have that sharp, explosive dribbling that scares defenders. He doesn't take on players the way someone like Rafinha does. And when the game gets tight, especially against compact European defenses, that lack of directness becomes a problem. And that's exactly what happened in the Champions League semi-final against Inter Milan. In extra time, Barcelona were chasing the game. Inter had just scored, and you could see the urgency shift. But Rafinha looked gassed. And when you're chasing a game at that level, you need to bring on a substitute who changes the tempo. Someone who can isolate a fullback, go past him, and create something out of nothing. But Flick didn't have that option. There was no natural dynamic winger left on the bench. The energy, the chaos, it just wasn't there. Barcelona stalled, and that moment alone shows you how depth, or the lack of it, can kill momentum. Hansi Flick saw the same issue. It's not surprising that Barcelona has since been linked with players like Luis Diaz and Marcus Rashford. Think about what those names bring. Diaz is relentless, a proper wide man who thrives in one-on-one situations. He cuts inside with purpose, isn't afraid to shoot and never stops running. Rashford, on the other hand, gives you versatility. He can stretch defenses and play through the middle if needed. And most importantly, he has that big game mentality. He's the kind of player you can throw on in the 80th minute and still expect something to happen. These aren't just flashy names for the sake of headlines, they're exactly what Barcelona lacked in that Inter game. Energy off the bench, fearlessness and impact. They're players who, even if they don't start, can come into a Champions League quarter-final or semi-final and shift the balance. That's what Flick needs to compete deep into Europe again. Because right now, it's clear the left wing is over-reliant on one player, and that's a dangerous place to be in a 50-plus game season. The squad can't afford to burn out its best wide man without a real replacement ready. But that issue isn't limited to the left side, because on the opposite flank, the expectations are even higher, and the backup options are even fewer. The right wing is all centered around one player, Lamine Yamal. Look, what Yamal did this season is beyond incredible. He's 17 and he's already playing like a seasoned pro. You don't usually see that kind of maturity in decision-making from a teenager. His ability to pick the right pass, when to take on his man, when to keep the ball, when to shoot, that's not normal for his age. His shot power, his composure, and his technical ability under pressure, it honestly looks like he's been doing this for 10 years. He's been Barcelona's spark on the right side. When games looked like they were slowing down, Yamal added rhythm. When teams sat deep, Yamal took them on. He became the player who created something out of nothing, and in multiple matches, he was the difference maker. In a squad this young, that's saying a lot. He was trusted in big matches, both domestically and in Europe, and he delivered. He was arguably one of Barcelona's most influential players this season. But as good as he is, we have to be honest. Relying this much on a 17-year-old across an entire season is risky. There were moments in matches, especially deep into the second half, when you could see signs of fatigue. He's always fit, sure, but that doesn't mean the load isn't heavy. You can't expect him to play 90 minutes every 3 days and still maintain the same level of sharpness. And let's be real, what happens if he picks up a minor injury? What if he needs a rest? You can't go into a season that includes La Liga, the Champions League, and multiple domestic competitions and not have a proper backup for your most creative wide player. And that's why Barcelona needs to act now. Because if Yamal's out, it's not just about replacing a player, it's about replacing your entire attacking rhythm on that side. You can't just slot in a random winger and expect the same output. The perfect player to solve this? Ryan Cherki. Cherki is someone Barcelona should seriously be looking at. First, he's incredibly gifted on the ball. His close control, vision, and ability to play between the lines make him a real asset. But more importantly, he's versatile. He can play on the right, he can drift inside as a number 10, and he offers a completely different attacking angle. He's the kind of player who can either play alongside Yamal in a dual creator system or come on for him without the drop in quality being too steep. And this is the kind of depth Flick needs, someone who can provide similar technical quality but with a different style. While Yamal thrives out wide and isolates defenders, Cherki is better at drifting into spaces and creating from central areas, and that unpredictability could be key in unlocking European defenses that are hard to break down. From a financial point of view, it's a smart move too. Cherki reportedly has a €25 million release clause, and for a player of his talent, age and versatility, that's a bargain. In today's market, that's good business, especially for a club like Barcelona, still trying to manage its spending carefully. In short, Cherki gives Flick a lot of tactical flexibility. He strengthens the right wing, supports Yamal when needed, and gives Barcelona the depth and variation they sorely missed this season. But that's still just the attack. We've talked about the left and right flanks, but there's another position that urgently needs reinforcement, and that's the left back. Alejandro Balde has been one of the most important players under Hansi Flick's early system. He's not just defending or making up the numbers in the backline, he's essential to how Barcelona holds width, breaks lines, and transforms from defense to attack. Without Balde, the left side looks completely different. Whenever Barcelona builds up, Balde is usually the one stretching the pitch on the left. He pushes high, holds the line and creates space for the midfielders to operate. His pace gives Rafinha the freedom to move inside without the team losing width. His dribbling and energy allow Barcelona to beat pressing systems and carry the ball from deep. And most importantly, he's consistent. You don't see many 21-year-olds managing both ends of the pitch this well in high-pressure games. But here's the problem. The backup left-back situation isn't ideal. Yes, Hector Fort and Gerard Martin have done a decent job when called upon, especially Gerard, who's solid defensively and good at holding structure. But he's more of a stay-back and defend type. He doesn't carry the ball with the same explosiveness. He doesn't stretch defenses or link up with the winger like Balde. So, whenever Balde is unavailable or just needs a rest, Barcelona's entire left side becomes predictable. The overloads disappear, the combination play dries up, and you can feel the difference in the team's tempo. That's why this is a position that needs serious depth, someone who fits the Balde mold, not just someone to stand in as a placeholder. A dream option would have been Alphonso Davies, a left-back who can dominate offensively and defensively, with elite recovery speed and attacking threat. But realistically, Bayern aren't letting him go unless it's for an insane fee, and Barcelona is not in a position to spend that kind of money right now. So a more realistic and smart option is Lewis Hall from Newcastle. Hall is young, aggressive and very similar in profile to Balde. He's got that ability to go up and down the flank for 90 minutes. He can dribble, overlap and even play inverted when needed. His stamina is elite and technically he's very clean. He may not be at Balde's level yet, but he has the same playing profile, which is exactly what Barcelona needs in a backup. You don't want a backup to be a completely different type of player, it messes with the system. You want someone who, when subbed in, doesn't require the rest of the team to change how they play. And again, we're talking about a long season here. Champions League, La Liga, Copa del Rey, Supercopa. You need 2 players per position, especially fullbacks who are asked to do so much. And if Flick wants his system to work every week, he has to make sure the width and energy from the left never drop. Bringing in someone like Lewis Hall means Flick can rotate Balde without a performance dip. And in games where Barcelona is chasing goals, having 2 fast, aggressive fullbacks on either side can change the tempo completely. This is a depth signing that directly improves results, not just a backup for emergencies. But the fullback's role isn't the only position under threat. There's a bigger concern coming up, and that's in central defense, especially with Ronald Araujo's future up in the air. This is where things could get tricky for Hansi Flick next season, because right now Barcelona's starting centre-back duo looks set, Íñigo Martínez and Pau Kubasi. Kubasi has been a revelation. At just 17, he already plays like a seasoned pro. His calmness, positioning and passing under pressure have made him undroppable, and alongside him you have Íñigo Martínez. Experienced, aggressive, dominant in the air and left-footed, which gives perfect balance to the backline. It's a partnership that worked well last season. But here's the problem. Beyond those two, the situation is far from secure. Ronald Araujo, arguably Barcelona's most complete defender, is heavily linked with a move away. Bayern Munich and top clubs are circling, and given Barcelona's financial reality, a big enough bid might force the club to sell. If that happens, it leaves a major hole in the depth chart. Because behind Kubasi and Martinez, there's no one who fully replaces what Araujo brings. Jules Koundé is solid, but under Flick, he's mostly being used as a right-back, where his ability to defend in wide areas and carry the ball out is more valuable. Andreas Christensen is decent in the build-up and has experience, but his injuries last season made it clear he can't be relied on consistently over a full campaign. So if Araujo is sold, and let's be honest, there's a good chance he will be, Barcelona must bring in another centre-back, not to just replace the number, but to maintain the level. And this is where Hansi Flick's intentions are becoming clear. Earlier there were strong reports linking Barca to Jonathan Tah. Flick knows him well from Germany, tall, strong, composed on the ball and a leader in the back line. That move didn't happen, but the profile tells you what Flick wants, a modern, physically dominant, ball-playing centre-back. A perfect fit in that mould would be Gonçalo Inácio from Sporting CP. He's only 23, but he's already proven himself in European competition. Left-footed, great at reading the game, and most importantly, very comfortable playing out from the back. He's the type of player who could slot in next to Kubasi or rotate with Íñigo Martínez without disrupting the defensive structure. Another reason why Inácio makes sense: versatility. He's played in a back 3 and a back 4 and even stepped into midfield at times. That flexibility is crucial for Flick, who likes his defenders to be adaptable and proactive, not just reactive. And considering the number of games Barcelona will play next season, La Liga, Copa del Rey, Supercopa, Champions League, there's no way you survive that grind with just 3 reliable centre-backs. You need 4 minimum. Also, let's not forget that Martinez, while still effective, is on the older side and not exactly bulletproof when it comes to injuries. Kubasi is still a teenager. That's why someone like Iniaso could be so important. Not just as an Araujo replacement if needed, but as a long-term building block in the back line. So for Flick, this is a critical decision. If Araujo stays, fine, depth is manageable. But if he goes, replacing him with the right kind of centre-back is not optional, it's essential. So yeah, while Barcelona looked strong on the surface last season, winning the league and 2 domestic cups, the deeper you look, the more you realise that squad depth is the real issue holding them back from dominating Europe again. Hansi Flick has inherited a talented young squad, but without proper reinforcements in key positions, like the left wing, right wing, left back and centre back, it's going to be nearly impossible to compete on all fronts. But what do you think? Can they win the international treble next season? Well, let's talk about that, and don't forget to check out our last video on the weaknesses of Xabi Alonso. Thank you.